Hey guys, welcome back to the Overseers. My name's Proilios and I'm joined as usual by my co-host Nightwing. We are done with pretty much the entire regular season as well as all four tournaments of season 4 of the Overwatch League. And it's been a really crazy experience for all of us fans throughout the world. We recently got done with the Countdown Cup, which was taken by the LA Gladiators, and I believe this is their first tournament win in Overwatch League history. So, a huge congrats to them. They entirely deserved that trophy, considering how well all of these players played. And I want to ask you, Nightwing, what do you think really clicked for the Gladiators this time round?
I think all of the players that are supposed to be carries for the Gladiators just really stepped into their role. And the funny thing is, like, unlike Chengdu, who like has Leave as its like sole carry almost, Gladiators have like multiple players carrying different positions. Where Shu is just an absolute nut on the map, um, and he was just insanely successful in basically like every duel he took with really anyone else on the other team. Birdring really popped off on the Hanzo, for example. Kester was very consistent on the Tracer, uh, and Space was also feeling really well and had a very good damage impact as well on that Diva role. So many just pieces for the Gladiators stuck really well. I think Muse played a lot better than he generally has the rest of the season. I think it was just a step up than before. And for me, at least, his position as kind of the one of the better rookie main tank signings of the season was actually kind of solidified. I was a little bit iffy about him at the beginning, especially because I was not very convinced about his Reinhardt, but his ball uh, and his overall integration into just the dive kind of system for the Gladiators has been exceptional.
Yeah, and I would say that there's a lot of weightage, like, to just being super flexible, and I think the Gladiators proved that they were able to play a lot of different kinds of compositions on different kinds of maps, and ultimately I guess adaptability wins you games, and the Gladiators just proved that by kind of persevering. I don't think they were necessarily the most consistent team in this tournament. They were definitely the most consistent from NA, but like a team like Chengdu, going into the finals, they were looking like really formidable opponents, with Leave naturally looking really solid, Jinmu mega comfortable on the Farah, and then you just have the whole team kind of vibing a little bit this season, right? And it wasn't an easy game by any means for the Gladiators, because the Hunters took them uh, to the final map, and the Gladiators really had to earn that win. So huge props even to Chengdu for making it such a close game. I personally thought that Chengdu would beat the Gladiators, but didn't end up happening. And thanks to, I would say, Birdring and Kevster. Like, Kevster did get player of the match for the finals, but I would say Birdring totally deserved it for the Hanzo play, especially on Havana. Like, it was absolutely amazing. You guys should definitely go watch that match if you get the time. It was amazing. And yeah, I think that brings us to the end of all of the tournaments during the regular season, and all we have remaining are the postseason games. We will head to talking about those in a little bit, but we want to address one roster move that happened in the past week, which is the Hangzhou Spark dropping their flex support MCD. And this happened because MCD made some racist remarks about China on his stream, I believe, and naturally that led to a lot of backlash. And the Spark ultimately said that it went against their team's values and then dropped him. So I would say that it's a pretty big loss, because MCD was playing quite well for the Spark, and like, although they do have coldest in that flex support position, uh, it just hurts to have a good player leaving the team. I guess overall it's better for the team's image, and they definitely made the right move, because I don't think anyone that's racist should be allowed a spot on a team, like, anywhere. So good move by them. But do you think that this hurts their chances in the postseason games at all, Nightwing? Or do you think Coldest can still fill that void?
While I was definitely questioning why Coldest was not put in for the majority part of the season. Once he was put in that match against Guangzhou, uh, that's a match that they really should not have lost. I mean, Hangzhou, for the most part of the season, has been a better caliber of team than the Guangzhou Charge, and Coldest and Mika were just not really able to clutch it out. Obviously, uh, they've had some weeks now to perfect their craft and integrate better with the team. Now that MCD will also be out, but I fear it might be too little, too late, and you just need a slightly longer time, I think, to integrate with the team. And considering the result against Guangzhou, I feel like given even a few weeks, Hangzhou will still struggle to integrate those players, whereas the opposing team, which is the Philadelphia Fusion for the play-ins, which we'll talk about soon, is much better integrated, even though they've had their kind of just endless list of travel issues and player integration issues as well. They've still had just that little bit more time, and I think that may just hurt the Hangzhou Spark, because you have to remember that it's a single elimination bracket, right? So it's that one match, the very first match, where either Coldest completely clicks or he does not. And in my opinion, I think it will be just a little bit too hard for him. But if it does work out for them, then that's good. I mean, I don't blame the Spark for letting MCD go, because that's not really behavior that you can tolerate. But that would hurt the team.
Yeah, I completely agree. The funny thing here is that Coldest has actually been with the Spark since season 3, and he didn't get much of a chance to play there either. I guess he just got a couple of maps, but they were primarily playing Bebe, who ultimately we saw like kind of his downfall last year. He ended up being one of the weakest flex supports in the APAC region. This year he's doing better, I would say. But anyway, Coldest must have had at least some like a decent bit of scrim time with the Spark. So I'm also certain that he'll have some at least good coordination with Gusho and Chinese. But I guess because the team is going for Korean comms, I don't know if that they're going to change that structure so far out into the season, especially given that Bernard and Bernard Sominsu and sorry, not Godsby, Architect haven't really commed in Chinese as far as we know. So I think they will stick to those Korean comms. It's just a matter of seeing whether Coldest can adjust to them, because even though he's a flex support, right, you like no matter what role you're playing on a team, unless it's like hardcore hit scan DPS like Shy, there is a good bit of communication involved. So like no matter if you're calling out discords or if you're calling out positioning of flankers, because sometimes when you're calling out enemy positions, you can kind of like those comms do matter, because in different languages there are kind of different call signs for different positions. So like how we say, like in Kings Row we say hotel in English, there might be a different call sign for that in Korean and in Chinese. So I mean obviously there will be, because it's a different language, but yeah, you get what I mean. So yeah, remains to be seen if Coldest can actually still step up, but yeah, that's the bit of news we wanted to mention. And in a little bit of bigger news, I guess, the Overwatch League announced that since a few teams from the APAC region won't be able to travel to the NA region for the playoffs, they are going to host the playoffs again at Hawaii. So once again, I guess we'll see the NA teams traveling there and then battling it out online with the APAC teams. And this does kind of hurt the NA teams, because they'll again be playing on higher ping than anticipated. Uh, and yeah, that sucks, because lower latency Overwatch is always like more fair and more fun to watch, I guess, because it's more competitive. What are your thoughts on this whole situation, Nightwing?
I think players that are kind of mad about this definitely do have, a very strong case, because teams like the Atlanta Rain, I mean, Pelican is not currently cleared for travel because of his medical condition, I believe, or maybe some other reason, but he's not currently kind of cleared to travel, right? So he can't really make it to Hawaii, and that's something that they will really struggle with, because Pelican is, in my opinion at least, the best player on the Atlanta Reign at the moment. And even if he's not, any player that's missing from your roster is a big blow, right? Because he will have to otherwise play on very high ping, and that's just not the kind of situation you want to be in. So it's incredibly unfortunate for those kinds of teams. As well as the Paris Eternal, I'm not sure what their travel situation will be like. And I'm not really sure if they can do anything regarding Hawaii either, because I believe they're all still in the EU, all the players. So it's still a rough situation for all of them, because I believe from the EU to Hawaii, I believe that's higher ping than from EU to the rest of the USA, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be a weird situation, and people definitely are, not wrong to be mad about it. But I think there's a lot of complexities here that I don't really have the kind of authority to comment on. So uh, hopefully the Overwatch League has done the best that they could, but it's just not something that's going to work out very well for some teams. And it may give other teams kind of an unfair advantage, because as teams like the Paris Eternal or the Atlanta Reign might struggle, these other teams can get a leg up and kind of just take it away, right? So that's something that I hope does not happen, and teams are still able to compete fairly. But with the kind of latency that they will experience, I think it may just be something that may heavily affect the results of certain matches, which is quite unfortunate.
Yeah. And actually, since you mentioned Paris Nightwing, Avala, who is the GM of the Paris Eternal, did tweet about this. She said that they had been trying to get American visas for quite some time, but because the country's current situation with COVID, they are unable to even get interviews for their visas. So it's been really tough for some of them. Like some have found it naturally easier to get visas than others because some of them are in different countries. But in general, it doesn't look like like the Paris players will be able to travel to Hawaii if uh, they make it to the playoffs. Which, I mean, we will come to soon. Do you have anything more to add about this? Otherwise, we can move on and talk about the postseason a little bit.
Uh, I don't really think there's much else to talk about. I think it is unfortunate that we won't be able to see those just filled up crowds with fans cheering. I think LAN events coming back would really be a big boon to Overwatch League. Uh, Obviously, there are some rumors that have been denied about just kind of different proceedings as of next season, but those have been largely denied, so there's not much weight into them. That said, I think it is just a big blow to not really have that fan interaction, both for the health of the esport and as an entertainment product, as well as just the morale of the players going into next season. So it's just something that's very unfortunate, and yeah, it's going to be a little rough watching that.
Yeah, I agree. I think Overwatch, just like I guess most sports and esports, is at its best when it's played in front of a live crowd because I thoroughly used to enjoy kind of the atmosphere, even like as an online viewer of the Blizzard Arena, or even at some of these home stands that we saw before COVID happened. So I really hope we are able to get back to those live events. But I guess while there are still lack, there's still a lack of vaccinated civilians. There's just going to be a big kind of barrier to hosting these live events in some places. So once again, guys, if you aren't vaccinated, please do get vaccinated. COVID is very, very real. If you don't believe in it, I don't know like how to explain it to you. But there are still like those non-vaxxers out there, just absolutely crazy. Just please, guys, go get vaccinated. It's for your own good. It's for your family's good. Keep your loved ones safe. And yeah, I think let's then move on and just talk about the play-in bracket. Because before we even get to the playoffs, there are these single elimination games that we're going to witness, which are going to determine the like three additional teams, two from NA and one from APAC, that will qualify for the playoffs. And the way the bracket is structured is that in NA, the Paris Eternal and the Washington Justice will first play out a match, the winner of which will play with the San Francisco Shock, and the winner of that game will qualify for the playoffs. Then, side by side, the Boston Uprising and the Toronto Defiant will play another game, the winner of which will play against the Houston Outlaws, and the winner of that match will also qualify for the playoffs. So, two teams from NA go in that way, and then the third team, which will be from the APAC region, will be determined by two matches. The first of which will be Spark versus Fusion, and the winner of that will play against the Seoul Dynasty, and the winner of that match will qualify for the playoffs. So these three teams will go ahead and join the three NA teams and the two APAC teams that are waiting, which are the Gladiators, Rain, and the Fuel from NA, and the Dragons and the Hunters from APAC. So overall, yeah, 4 NA and 3 APAC. It's going to be like really crazy because even though there's not a lot of time left for the season, there's still like probably what I think a couple dozen games to go. I maybe a little bit less, but still. And there's some absolute like crazy outcomes that can happen here. Like for example, the San Francisco Shock, who were like coming into the season with kind of the idea of going for a three-peat, they might not even make it to the playoffs. How crazy does that sound, Nightwing, as a Shock fan yourself?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a possibility of that. I want to clear up though that the graphic that the Overwatch League has provided on Twitter is a bit misleading. So Washington, as we know, has chosen the Paris Eternal, but then out of either of the matches between Toronto or Boston and Justice and Eternal, the Shock can pick the winner of either of these matches, and then because Houston is lower seeded than them, then Houston gets the kind of the leftover team.
Ah, okay.
So
Yeah.
that's just something I want to make clear. So yeah, that's definitely a possibility, which is quite crazy, considering the Shock were at number 2 in NA pretty much the entire time until like the end of the Countdown Cup. So that's something that's going to be quite interesting. How Shock kind of makes its last stand and tries to grapple back for that trophy. Uh, they desperately don't want it taken from them, especially considering how kind of weird their season has been. So that's going to be a desperate fight. I think that's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, and guys, we will come to our specific bracket predictions in next week's episode, which we will release a little bit sooner because we are releasing this episode a little bit later in the week than usual. But yeah, we will get to those specific preds later on. We just want to also touch upon the patch that these teams will be playing on, because the rest of the season will be playing on our current live patch, in which we've got those changes. I'll just quickly go through them. So there's the Doomfist buff where his cooldowns recharge twice as fast during Meteor Strike when he's in the air. And Genji's Shuriken damage up from 28 to 29, and Dragon Blade damage reduced from 120 to 110. Moira's self healing increased from 20 to 24. Um, I don't know if that is per second. I think that's per second. Then Roadhog just feeds 25% less ult charge. Soldiers damage per bullet increased from 19 to 20. Biotic field healing reduced from 40 to 35 HP. And then Wrecking Ball. So his proximity mines no longer stick to walls. His grapple is on cooldown when he spawns. And the adaptive shield cast time has been removed, and the duration increased from 7 to 9 seconds. So quite a mouthful, but you can view the patch notes and just get the context. And yeah, Nightwing, how do you think this is going to affect all the teams? Because I think there's a little bit of division among the community as to whether some of these changes are net buffs or net nerfs. So what's the lay of the land in your opinion?
So I think what's fairly obvious is that there are decent buffs being given to kind of the flex DPS picks, which can make the play-ins quite interesting because we've got quite strong flex DPS players on all of the play-in teams, right? You've got Naga, you've got Assassin, you've got Valentine, you've got Nice, you've got Nero, you've got Dante, I guess, to some degree. So it's going to be interesting to see if the Genji is actually picked up, considering that the last time he was buffed in the previous season, he was kind of dominating the meta. This buff is less disruptive, but it may just lead to him actually being picked. The Doomfist as well, I think, benefits teams like the Gladiators and obviously any other team that has like a Doomfist specific player or just any player that can swap to that role, right? Uh, Soldier weirdly might be the strongest hit scan, which is a word that, like, just a phrase that seems very wrong to speak out, but his damage has been buffed by 1 per bullet, but that actually changes a lot of breakpoints. So it does actually make him quite a bit stronger, and the effects of which have been seen on ladder, but obviously that's not indicative of the Overwatch League. But Soldier was already being played by some teams at particular like instances, right? So you might just see that increase in this playoffs patch. And Ball has been nerfed, which means that he can't stall as much, because you can't instantly have that grapple right out of spawn. So while the general play of the hero outside of stalling when it's overtime has actually been buffed, considering you can instantly use your adaptive shield, and it stays for longer in case you're not, obviously it's not being stripped away from you because of the damage. So in general play, you will see Ball getting a buff, and then those overtime stalls will just become less annoying. So that may just be a better viewing experience, mostly, but it may mean that teams that are more clutch can suffer a little bit once they kind of swap to their comfort picks and try to instantly get onto the point. So I don't think it will make a huge difference, this Ball change, in terms of general play, but it may mean that teams will find that with a shorter time bank, you don't need to swap to the Ball. You may just continue with the Winston comp or something along those lines.
Yeah, I definitely feel like Ball will be the most played main tank in the final playoffs, because I think just based on how these teams play, 'cause, like, okay, you don't play Ball that much for stalling, which is fine, but during like actually playing him during fights, it's a fairly good buff to him, because he has like no cast time for the adaptive shields, and the shields also take 2 seconds longer to wear off. So like most of these teams, what they do with the Ball is go for those massive slam engages, right, where the ball slams and then either like a Farah rocket melee combo finishes off the target, or you see a Tracer finishing them off, or a Sombra, or sometimes even an Echo stick with a sticky and focus beam combo. So generally speaking, these teams are really good at just slamming a massive bunch of targets, getting a lot of adaptive shields so that the ball survives, and then following up and picking somebody off. So, uh, like in organized play, especially, this is going to be a massive change. Uh, I think if you look at the stylistic differences between Ball players, where for example you have someone like Among, who always loves to go for these slam-based hard engages, and just farm adaptive shields, stay in the fight a little bit longer, compared to Gaga, who's also on his team, where Gaga goes for, like, he plays a little more for creating a distraction rather than hard engages. If you've observed him, he's like a more independent kind of Ball player, and he just wants to distract and let Leave and Jinmu make the plays. So based on that, I think we could probably see more Amang, like just speculating at this point. But yeah, I think this is the biggest change of all. And then I think Doomfist's buffs will like definitely benefit teams like the Gladiators, like Nightwing said, where they do have like a Doom specialist in Mirror. I think Sparkle will look a lot better on the Doomfist as well. Because I think even though there's just like a quality of life change, it it can give opponents much less of a window, kind of to escape the ult or its follow-up damage, because you like once you're up in the air and your cooldowns recharge, like you'll pretty much just disengage if you see a good re-engage if you see a good chance, right? And at the Overwatch League level, it'll be super valuable to have an additional cooldown cycle after ulting, because these pros are like mechanically elite and they can land their combos way more often than the average player, which means they can get a kill or two extra just because of this buff. So situationally, yeah, we should see some more teams pulling it out. As for the Genji, I think the buff that he got last year was twofold, because he not only got the damage buff from 28 to 30, but he also got the firing rate buff, which just drastically increased his playtime. But in this case, it's not like he's got just a slight damage buff from 28 to 29, but his Dragon Blade has been nerfed, which wasn't the case last year. So I overall think this is a slight net nerf, because these days Genji's main values just comes from the Dragon Blade or the Nano Blade. Uh, like he's the reason he's not played that much is because of his kit, not really his damage numbers. Uh, so right now he does have a stronger mid fight, but since the ult is nerfed, I don't think he's going to be that good. Like for example, uh, like right now to kill a 250 HP target with Nano Blade, like before this buff, he would require a dash and he will right now require a dash and two slashes compared to like just a dash slash combo. So it seems like a minor difference on paper, but like remember that we aren't even considering the use of defensive abilities that increase the effective HP of all these heroes. So I don't think it will cause any change in Genji's pick rate. As for Hog, Moira, Soldier, I don't think even they are going to have any kind of significant change. Because yeah, even though we saw Soldier in the Countdown Cup, it's primarily like remember that there were 4 bans, so it might just be the bans because of which he was played more. Because remember, no Sigma, so less like shields in his face to break down. So with Sigma back, I guess you would still think twice before picking Soldier. I could be wrong, but yeah, that's my whole analysis. So I guess teams that play Ball and Doomfist will get a big buff. So I am actually really hyped to see the LA Gladiators, and we will talk about the playoff teams at a later stage. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the patch. And yeah, I think that's all we had to discuss for today. Any final thoughts, Nightwing?
No, I think we'll just talk about our predictions in the next episode, and uh, let's see which team makes it through, which team unceremoniously gets removed from the playoffs. Uh, I think it's going to be some close matches, and other matches maybe a little less close, but these teams are generally quite good. So uh, it's going to be interesting to see who really comes out on top.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't really prepared my bracket as well yet, but once I take a look at it, we'll definitely let you know what we think next week. So yeah, thanks a lot for listening, and we will see you in a few days. Bye bye. Have a good weekend.